What's up, you guys? It's Victoria from UnderVictoriaSpell, and in today's video I am going to be continuing the series that I wanted to start on my channel, and it's books that made me ... And in today's video it's the ones that have made me cry, and I'm looking forward to talking about these because they're emotional books and they really affected me and in such a good way, but also it's bittersweet because they are sad stories, so please know that crying is definitely ahead. But let's just hop right into today's video and talk about some sad romances. Okay, so let's hop right into these books. The first two that I'm going to talk about is an older author, an author that's very well known. This author has turned his books into movies, and I absolutely love the movies as well. But these are ones that I still think about to this day because they meant so much to me when I read them. And the first one is A Walk to Remember by Nicholas Sparks. This is my favorite Nicholas Sparks movie, but I really enjoy this book as well. And of course, if you have never read this book, it follows our hero as he has been put in detention because of an incident that he got into in an accident. So he's kind of being punished for these actions. And he meets Jamie, who is this really sweet girl who is going to help him practice for this Christmas play that they are going to be in. And it's kind of like their banter because he's like the big bad boy of the school and she's the quiet shy girl who's also a pastor's daughter. And I really loved this story because they're just such old souls and they match so perfectly together. I love how even though Jamie was like a really shy character, she still had that sass and she did not care to give it to Landon. If you have read this book or seen the movie, you obviously know what happens in the end, and that just broke me. The last part where it kind of flashes forward to him being older and he talks about their love being like the wind. Anytime I watch the movie or I read the book, I am sobbing because it is just so beautifully written. You can just feel their love through the entire book, and I really enjoyed this story. It is super old. I know probably most people have read it, but it is just something that is still stuck with me all these years later, and I like to do rereads of this book. Okay, and the next book that I'm going to talk about is also another Nicholas Sparks book, but it is one that wrecked me, and that is The Longest Ride. This book, when I read it, I was gobsmacked. Like, it was so good, and it's in different people's points of view. The movie is also really good. Scott Eastwood has my heart. He is chef's kiss and such a sexy cowboy, so we love that. But this follows our heroine as she meets this bull rider at a event, and it's kind of like their love story together. But one day on the way home, our heroine sees this car who has gotten into an accident on the side of the road, and it's this old man, and he is hurt and injured, but he doesn't want to leave without these boxes of letters to his wife. And that's really, I loved like the main story, but the romance between this older man and like how it flashes back to their romance in like the early 40s, 50s, and 60s, I just really loved. It was just so romantic. I love seeing their journey together, and it was so beautifully paralleled between the current couple and the past couple. I really loved this. It was such an emotional read for me, and it was done so well in the movie. And if you have not picked this up, you definitely should, because I feel like the movies, they do an excellent job, but the book was just so beautifully written, and I was sobbing reading these letters that he wrote to his wife, or when he talked about how much he loved his wife. It was just precious. Absolutely loved this. And the next book I'm going to talk about is one that I feel like has shattered this entire fandom, but in such a good way. And I bawled during a specific chapter in this book, and you're gonna know as soon as I pick it up, but it is just so good. And that is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Agatar series, and y'all already know chapter 54 and 55, the best chapters that have ever been written, was this book is just so good. And it follows our heroine as she is from the human world, but she kind of gets thrown into the Fae world based off of decisions that she made while she was still in the human world. And that's kind of like the first book's journey. The second is kind of the aftermath of what happens in the first book, but she's kind of having to be linked together to Reese, which is who I'm getting to, the scene that made me cry. But this story is like, the second book is just so heartbreaking because we kind of see Feyre, our main character, really go through a lot of PTSD and fear, and that's just heartbreaking to watch because she's away from her family. She is a whole different person now, and it's just really hard to see her go through that. But it also, I feel like it's so relatable for people that suffer from anxiety or PTSD. I feel like it was done very well, and how it was handled was amazing. But the part that absolutely just, I was sobbing, I remember it being like 5 in the morning. I was sitting pitch black in my apartment, and because I listened to this on audio, and I was sobbing, crying, because it was just so beautiful. I don't want to spoil it, but one of our characters pretty much professes love to another character, in the way that he went about their whole love story and really just sacrificed for her was just breathtaking. It was written so beautifully. I'm so glad that I finally decided to pick up this series because it was done immaculately, and I loved it so much. This Rysand is who the character is. If you haven't read the series, you definitely need to. But Rysand, he just did a beautiful job and making sacrifices and wording what he needed to his mate, and I absolutely loved it. Please pick up the series. You will not regret it. And the next book that I'm going to talk about is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. This is a dark romance. Please check your triggers before you go into this book because it deals with very heavy and serious topics. But it was such a beautiful read. It was very unique, and it follows our heroine as she is out at a bar one night, and she needs her sister's boyfriend to come and pick her up because she has been drinking and she doesn't want to drive home. So on their way back home, they get pulled over by this police officer, but it turns out it's actually a serial killer, and they both get kidnapped. And they are kept in this basement for weeks and months, and horrible things are done to them. And it was horrific to read this, but it was so powerful because of the journey that they went on. And the second half of the book really follows their journey and the aftermath of all the things that have happened to them. And really reading that like just broke my heart for both of those characters, and how they were dealing with their mental health, how to move forward with their future, and also the things that they've lost. It was very emotional for me to read. I definitely suggest that you read this, but at the same time, please just be careful if there's certain triggers for you, but I think it is worth the read. Jennifer Hartman did a beautiful job. And the next book that I'm going to talk about is actually a book in a series, and this is Blood Bonds by Jay Bree. This is book number 3 in the Bonds That Tie series, and as you guys know, I feel like I talk about this book series every time I'm making a video, but really the series is just so good, has meant the world to me, and I'm always going to be talking about it. But there was one specific book that just absolutely broke my heart, and as you know, Ollie is on this new journey because she has been on the run for the past few years because her parents have been killed, and there is something called the Resistance after her. So that's kind of her journey into books 1, 2, and 3. And in book 3, one of the main characters does get killed, and that's the scene that I'm referencing to that literally shocked me, and it made me bawl because there's this line at the very end where he is pretty much for trying to ask for forgiveness for his sins and hoping that he can, in his next life, make up for the sins that he has committed. And just, you see this character's journey through book 1, 2, and this is 3, and you hate him at times, you're frustrated, but you want so much goodness for this character. And in that moment, I was shattered because I was like, he frustrates me, but at the same time, I want nothing but for him to win at the end. And so when this happened, I was crying on the couch. Thank goodness the 4th book was available, so I was able to hop in and kind of figure out what was going on. But in that moment, I was crying for the hurt that had been caused, for the future that was not going to happen for these characters. And just as a whole, I was frustrated because I wanted nothing but good things for these characters. So that is another book that has made me bawl. Alright guys, those are the books that have made me cry. I don't cry a lot in romances, but these are the ones that I feel like have affected me the most, and they're still books that I think of, scenes that I think of. And I'm just thankful for these romances because you just live so many different lives as you read, but also you just appreciate the happy moments and you learn through those sad moments. So it was so fun to talk about these. Let me know, which emotion should I do next when I'm talking about these books? I would love to know. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.